With Grace's reluctant help, they borrowed a trailer and brought the mare home. Charlie named her Willow, inspired by the resilience of the trees that bent but never broke under the weight of storms. He spent hours tending to her that first night, brushing out her matted coat, cleaning her wounds, and making sure she had fresh water and hay. It wasn't much, but it was a start. As the days turned into weeks, Charlie poured every ounce of his energy into caring for Willow. He learned everything he could about horse care, reading books and watching videos late into the night. Slowly but surely, Willow began to improve. Her coat grew shinier, her eyes brighter, and her steps a little steadier. But not everyone believed in Charlie's mission. Neighbors scoffed, friends doubted, and even Grace, despite her support, often questioned whether it was all worth it. And just when it seemed like things were starting to turn around, an unexpected challenge arose, one that threatened to undo all of Charlie's hard work and determination. What happened next would test everything Charlie believed about hope, resilience, and the power of second chances. And as the boy and his horse faced their greatest obstacle yet, the outcome would leave everyone, Charlie, his family, and the entire town, amazed. In the weeks following Willow's arrival, Charlie's world began to revolve around her completely. Each morning before school, he would rush outside to check on her, offering her a gentle pat and a bucket of fresh water. In the evenings, he would sit by her in the small makeshift shelter he had built in their backyard, reading to her about horses, as if the sound of his voice could help her heal faster. Willow seemed to respond to his care, her once dull eyes now showing glimmers of life. But the progress was slow, and every day brought new challenges. Charlie's mom, Sarah, had been hesitant about the whole situation from the start. As a single mother working 2 jobs, she worried about the extra burden Willow might bring. Their finances were already stretched thin, and taking on the care of a sick horse felt like an impossible task. But every time she saw the determination in Charlie's eyes and the tenderness with which he cared for Willow, she found it hard to say no. Deep down, she admired her son's tenacity, even if it scared her. Grace, on the other hand, remained skeptical. As Charlie's older sister, she felt a sense of responsibility for him, especially with their mom working so much. She often found herself arguing with Charlie, pointing out all the reasons why saving Willow wasn't practical. "Charlie, you don't even know if she'll get better," she said one evening, crossing her arms as she watched him brushing Willow's mane. "What if all this effort is for nothing?" Charlie didn't look up, his focus entirely on Willow. "It's not for nothing," he replied firmly. "Even if she never gets completely better, at least she knows someone cares about her. That has to count for something." Grace sighed, frustrated but unable to argue with his reasoning. She couldn't deny that Willow had already brought a change in Charlie. He seemed more confident, more focused. Still, she couldn't shake the feeling that he was setting himself up for disappointment. As the days turned into months, word about Charlie and Willow began to spread around town. At first, it was just whispers. Neighbors noticing the boy and his horse in the backyard, kids at school teasing Charlie about his charity case. But then, a local farmer named Mr. Jenkins stopped by. He had heard about Willow and wanted to offer some advice. "You've got a good heart, kid," he said, tipping his hat. "But taking care of a horse like her isn't easy. If you ever need help, you let me know." Charlie appreciated the gesture, but was determined to handle things on his own. He didn't want anyone thinking he couldn't manage. However, as the weeks wore on, he began to realize just how much he still had to learn. Willow's health was improving, but not as quickly as he had hoped. Her limp persisted, and there were days when she seemed too tired to stand for long. The local vet, Dr. Myers, had visited once and mentioned the possibility of an old injury that might never fully heal. It was a hard pill for Charlie to swallow, but he refused to give up. Meanwhile, at school, the teasing had only gotten worse. Some kids thought it was funny that Charlie had spent all his savings on a horse no one else wanted. Others saw it as a chance to pick on him for being different. One afternoon, a group of boys cornered him in the hallway, mocking him for his lost cause. "Why don't you just give up?" One of them sneered. "That horse is never going to be worth anything." As Lisa turned to walk away, Emma's voice stopped her. "You don't know anything about me," she said, her tone calm but firm. Lisa froze, clearly not expecting a response. She turned back, raising an eyebrow. "Oh, really? And what's there to know?" Emma didn't answer. She didn't need to, not yet. But the look in her eyes said enough. Something big was coming, and for the first time, Lisa felt a flicker of uncertainty. The stage was set, and the tension was palpable. Emma's secret was on the verge of being revealed, and when it was, nothing would ever be the same again. Emma walked home that day with her heart racing. She had stood up to Lisa, not in a dramatic way, but enough to make her point. For the first time in a long while, she didn't feel powerless. The moment replayed in her mind, filling her with a mix of fear and exhilaration. She wasn't sure what would come next, but she knew she couldn't go back to being the quiet girl everyone overlooked. That night, Emma sat at her desk, the old leather notebook open in front of her. She traced her fingers over a photograph taped to one of the pages. A picture of her family taken years ago, standing in front of their estate. Her parents had always told her to be true to herself, no matter what. It was time to honor that. The next morning, Emma arrived at school with a quiet determination. She wasn't sure how things would unfold, but she was ready for whatever came her way. As she walked through the halls, she noticed the usual stares and whispers. But this time, they didn't bother her. She wasn't here to prove anything to anyone. She was here for herself. By lunchtime, the tension was thick. Lisa and her group sat at their usual table, laughing and gossiping. Emma could feel their eyes on her, but she ignored them. Instead, she walked straight to the center of the cafeteria and climbed onto one of the tables. The room fell silent as everyone turned to look at her, curiosity and confusion etched on their faces. "I have something to say," Emma began, her voice steady but loud enough to carry across the room. "For a long time, I've let people make assumptions about me. I've let them think I'm less than them because of how I look or where I sit during lunch. But today, I'm done hiding." The cafeteria buzzed with whispers, but Emma pressed on. "The truth is, you don't know me. None of you do. You see this." She gestured to her simple clothes and worn sneakers. "And you think you have me all figured out. But the truth is, I'm not what you think. I'm Emma Crawford, heiress to the Crawford fortune." The room erupted into shocked murmurs. Lisa's smug expression faltered, her confidence shaken. "You're lying," she scoffed, though her voice lacked its usual edge. Emma reached into her bag and pulled out a small envelope, holding it up for everyone to see. "This is a letter from my family's lawyer. It confirms everything. But you know what? None of it matters. I'm not telling you this to impress you or make you like me. I'm telling you because I'm done letting people like Lisa define my worth." The room was silent now, everyone hanging on her every word. Emma took a deep breath, her gaze sweeping across the crowd. We all have stories, struggles, and things we're dealing with that no one else sees. So maybe it's time we stop judging people based on appearances and start treating each other with a little more kindness. With that, Emma climbed down from the table and walked out of the cafeteria, leaving the stunned crowd behind. She didn't need their applause or approval. For the first time in years, she felt free. Free to be herself, free from the fear of judgment. Over the next few weeks, things began to change. Some people apologized for the way they had treated Emma, while others kept their distance, unsure of how to approach her. Lisa tried to hold on to her reputation, but her influence waned as people started to see through her facade. Noah continued to sit with Emma under the oak tree, their conversations growing deeper and more meaningful. He admired her courage and the way she had handled everything with grace. For Emma, Noah was a reminder that genuine connections were worth more than anything money could buy. In the end, Emma didn't need to reclaim her place in the world of wealth and privilege. She had found something far more valuable, a sense of self-worth that no one could take away. And as she sat under the oak tree one afternoon, the sun warm on her face, she realized she had finally found her place. It wasn't defined by money or status, but by the strength to be herself, no matter what. Charlie clenched his fists, his face flushing with anger, but he didn't say a word. He had learned that arguing with bullies only made things worse. Instead, he focused on the image of Willow waiting for him at home, her trust in him unshakable. That thought was enough to keep him going. Back at home, things were far from perfect. The small shelter Charlie had built for Willow wasn't holding up well against the elements, and with winter approaching, the situation became more urgent. Charlie knew he needed to find a better solution, but he didn't have the money for proper materials. He spent hours brainstorming, trying to figure out a way to keep Willow safe and warm. One evening, while flipping through an old horse care book he had borrowed from the library, Charlie stumbled across a story about a horse that had been rehabilitated after an injury, thanks to a combination of care and physical therapy. The story gave him an idea. If he could find a way to strengthen Willow's legs and build her confidence, maybe she would have a chance at a full recovery. It wouldn't be easy, but Charlie was willing to try. The next day, he visited Mr. Jenkins, swallowing his pride to ask for advice. To his surprise, the old farmer was more than willing to help. "You've got a lot of guts, kid," Mr. Jenkins said with a smile. "I'll show you a few tricks that might help. And don't worry about the shelter. I've got some spare wood you can use." With Mr. Jenkins's guidance, Charlie started working on exercises to help Willow regain her strength. They began small, with short walks and stretches, gradually increasing the intensity as Willow grew more comfortable. It was slow, painstaking work, but Charlie never lost hope. He spent every spare moment with Willow, cheering her on and celebrating even the smallest victories. But just as things seemed to be looking up, disaster struck. One cold, windy night, a storm rolled in, battering the backyard with rain and howling winds. Charlie woke to the sound of cracking wood and rushed outside to find that the makeshift shelter had collapsed. Willow stood trembling in the rain, her thin coat offering little protection against the cold. Panic surged through Charlie as he led Willow to the garage, the only other place she could stay for the night. He wrapped her in blankets and stayed by her side, his heart heavy with guilt. He had promised to take care of her, and now she was more vulnerable than ever. The storm passed, but the damage was done. Willow's progress stalled, and Charlie began to doubt himself. Was he really helping her, or was he only making things worse? As the days dragged on, the weight of his responsibilities grew heavier, and the doubts in his mind grew louder. It wasn't until a surprising turn of events that Charlie's faith was restored, setting the stage for a moment that would change everything, not just for him and Willow, but for everyone who had doubted them. The days after the storm were some of the hardest Charlie had faced. Willow was weaker, and her spirit seemed dimmed by the cold night she had endured. Charlie felt the weight of his choices pressing down on him, heavier than ever. He had promised her safety and comfort, yet he had failed to protect her. Every time he looked into her eyes, he saw the trust she had placed in him, and the thought of letting her down was unbearable. Word of the storm's damage spread quickly through their small town. To Charlie's surprise, a few neighbors stopped by to offer help. Mr. Jenkins arrived with a truckload of wood and tools, determined to rebuild a sturdier shelter. Grace, who had been skeptical from the start, threw herself into the project as well, bringing blankets and hay to keep Willow warm. Even Sarah, despite her initial doubts about the whole situation, took a day off work to lend a hand. It was as if everyone had suddenly realized how much this meant to Charlie, and perhaps how much it now meant to them too. With their combined efforts, a new shelter began to take shape. It wasn't just a shelter, it was a symbol of resilience, a testament to what could be achieved when people came together for a common cause. As the walls went up and the roof was secured, Charlie felt a spark of hope reignite in his chest. Maybe he hadn't failed after all. But the real turning point came a few days later. Dr. Myers, the local vet, stopped by to check on Willow's condition. After a thorough examination, she shared some unexpected news. Willow's limp wasn't caused by an incurable injury, as everyone had assumed. Instead, it was due to a poorly healed sprain that could still be treated with the right care and therapy. She has a real chance at recovery, Dr. Myers said with a smile. But it's going to take time and a lot of work. Charlie's heart soared at the news. He felt as if the weight of the world had been lifted from his shoulders. This was the second chance Willow deserved, and he was more determined than ever to give her the life she had been denied. Under Dr. Myers' guidance, Charlie and Willow embarked on a new chapter of their journey. They started with gentle exercises, walking together through the fields behind their house, and gradually building up to more challenging activities. Every small improvement felt like a victory, and with each step, Willow seemed to grow stronger, not just in body, but in spirit. As the weeks turned into months, the bond between Charlie and Willow deepened. She no longer shied away from human touch, and her once dull coat now gleamed in the sunlight. Her eyes, once filled with weariness, now sparkled with life. Neighbors who had once doubted Charlie's mission began stopping by to watch Willow's progress, their skepticism replaced with admiration. Even the kids at school, who had teased Charlie relentlessly, began to see him in a different light. Some even asked if they could come over to meet Willow. The real climax of their journey came during the town's annual fall festival. As part of the event, there was a small horse show where local riders showcased their horses' skills and recovery stories. Encouraged by Dr. Myers and Mr. Jenkins, Charlie decided to enter Willow. It wasn't about winning. It was about showing everyone what Willow was capable of and proving that even the most overlooked and underestimated creatures could achieve greatness. On the day of the festival, Charlie led Willow into the arena, his heart pounding with a mix of nerves and excitement. The crowd was silent as they watched the boy and his horse step forward. Willow's once limping gait was now steady and confident, her head held high. Together, they demonstrated the simple exercises they had worked so hard on, each movement a testament to their perseverance. When they finished, the arena erupted into applause. Charlie looked around, his face glowing with pride as tears welled in his eyes. Grace and Sarah were in the front row, cheering louder than anyone else. Even the neighbors who had doubted him stood clapping, their faces filled with admiration. For the first time, Charlie felt truly seen, not as a kid with an impossible dream, but as someone who had made a difference. In the weeks that followed, Charlie and Willow became a symbol of hope and determination in their town. People began to see that second chances weren't just for horses. They were for everyone. Charlie's story inspired others to take risks, to believe in the impossible, and to look beyond appearances to see the potential in every living being. By the time winter rolled around, Willow was thriving, and so was Charlie. The challenges they had faced together had shaped him into someone stronger, someone who believed that kindness and hard work could change the world.